Well, look who's here, making his PFT PM debut. Rodney, when Matt Casey said, hey, you can do PFT PM on Friday because we don't do PFT live, we give the crew the day off. He said, which of the co-hosts would you want? And I basically said, surprise me. And this is a surprise. We got Rodney Harrison on Black Friday, extra work. I don't know that you get paid for this. You probably do, or you wouldn't be doing it. But Black Friday, Rodney Harrison on PFT PM. Rodney, how are you, buddy?
Hey, Mike, what is wrong with you this morning? I show up every morning, every Friday at 7 o'clock. I'm up at 4:30, 5 o'clock. I'm ready to go, baby.
Hey, I'm sleep deprived this week, and I don't know what's come over me where I can't fall asleep at night anymore, or I wake up and I can't fall back to sleep. I got 2.5 hours Tuesday night, 3.5 hours Wednesday night, 4 hours last night. So maybe I'm just starting to have brain melt from lack
Well,
of
you're
sleep. But anyway,
old, Mike. You're old. You're over 50, and when you're over 50, your hormones go through something crazy. And it's the same way for me. I can sleep 4 or 5 hours at night, but I'm much more of a napper. I'm a guy that naps. If I'm on a plane, I could take a 2 or 3 hour nap. If I'm sitting in a chair, I could take a 20-minute nap. It almost feels like I've slept 2 hours when I take a nap. So I'm more of a napper.
and I can fall asleep during the day anywhere. I just can't fall asleep at night when it's time to sleep. Like
Yeah.
I'll lay down in the afternoon. PFTPM has been replaced with old farts corner today. But if I lay down in the middle of the afternoon, I'm out in 2 seconds. I'm out. I'll lay in bed for an hour trying to fall asleep. And then you got to play beat the clock because if you take too long to fall asleep, you got to get up and go pee.
The problems that rich folks have, like you.
It's old, not rich. It's old. I'd be dealing with this even if I didn't have any money. All right. Well, let's make some money, shall we? Let's talk about the three games from Thanksgiving. And look, we always shut down PFT Live on Thanksgiving and on Black Friday to give the crew a break. And I've gone through in the past, and I guess I'm the Thanksgiving equivalent of Scrooge because my attitude's always, we need to have a show. It's a big football day and it's a big reaction day. But I eventually realized after I was visited by the ghost of Thanksgiving future that let's have the crew off. We can do it this way, and that's what we're doing. So I want to start with the biggest game of the day from the standpoint of the most stuff to talk about because good football is fun to watch. Bad football is fun to talk about. And what we saw at the end of Bears Lions, and I got to give the Bears credit. I thought they were done. I thought they'd given up. After all those close losses, Rodney, I thought that just air was out of the balloon. They're down 16-0 in the first half. It should have been worse. I felt like they just wanted to go home. They brought it in the second half. And I was impressed by that. Before we tear them down for how they handled the end of the game, I was very impressed the Bears woke up in the second half.
Yeah, I was impressed too, Mike. In the second half, they came out, they played with just a sense of urgency. You saw Caleb Williams, he started getting hot, he started seeing some different things. Defensively, they started making some plays and just flying around. But that's what you need. But good teams do that for 4 quarters. You can't not do that in the first half and then turn it on in the second half.
We've seen a lot of games recently, too, where it's like two different teams. First half, teams horrible. Second half, they pull their way back into it. The Dolphins did that last night to a certain extent. We'll talk about that later. But the big news from the Lions Bears game, and I was thinking yesterday about memorable moments from prior Lions Thanksgiving games, and a couple of them stood out. The Jerome Bettis coin flip fiasco from 1998 from overtime. And I remember Dave Wilson returning the kickoff in 1980 for the Bears in overtime to win the game for Chicago. This is right up there from the standpoint of crazy stuff on Thanksgiving. The Bears, and I'll set the stage briefly here. The Bears had the ball 2nd and 20 on the Detroit 35 with 36 seconds left. Caleb Williams gets sacked. They got it to 41. 33 seconds on a ticking clock. They have a timeout. It's 3rd and 26. They got enough time to go up to the line of scrimmage, try to gain 8 or 10 yards, turn a 59-yard field goal attempt into 49, maybe. And like nobody knew what to do. I'd never seen anything like it before. And then all of a sudden, they finally snapped the ball with 6 seconds left. Caleb Williams throws the ball deep to Roma Dunze. Nothing happens. Game's over, and that's it. I couldn't believe it. And it all kind of like, it was like one of those dreams where you're trying to run and you feel like you're stuck in mud in slow motion. Like, what the hell are the Bears doing? I can't believe that happened. I can't believe Matt Eberflus is still employed as of the moment we're taping this. It might change. But Rodney, what was your thought as you saw that all unfold?
Yeah, at that moment, Mike, that's when I knew that they needed a new coach. That's when I said Eberflus is not the right guy for this team. And I started saying, look, the Bears aren't a well-coached team. I look at Matt Eberflus, no situational awareness, no situational awareness. This is something that you practice in 2 minute on Friday. You walk through it, you watch tape on it, and you hound it. And the thing that made us as a team so successful with Coach Belichick is we spent 90% of our time, Mike. We spent 90% of our time preparing for situations. That's how we practice. Every day was a different situation. So when it came down to it, whether you're a starter, whether you're a backup, you were never shocked. You were never overwhelmed by the moment, by the situation. That's called coaching. That's called preparing your team for any situation that might come about. And for me to sit there and watch and the quarterback, the young quarterback, not have two plays in his pocket. You're supposed to be communicating, hey, this is the first play, this is the second play. If this happens, we're going to spike the ball. We're going to throw it out. We're going to call timeout. You're supposed to talk to the young quarterback. These are things that you go through over the course of a week. And it's bad coaching. And there's no way he should be. I like him. He's a nice guy, but he's the wrong fit for the Chicago Bears. They need more of an offensive minded coach. They need a guy like a Ben Johnson to come in there, work one-on-one with Caleb Williams, because Eberflus is not the answer.
And as we tape this at 10:11 a.m. Eastern on Friday, my son just texted me that the Matt Eberflus Zoom is underway, business as usual. So he hasn't been fired. And the Bears have never, ever fired their head coach during the season. They've been around since 1919. Never fired a coach during the season.
Mike, you got to listen to the players. I mean, you see these players coming out. It's not like these players are answering questions, say, yeah, I believe in Coach Belichick. I believe that this is the coach that's going to take us and where we need to go. They're sitting back saying, I don't know what's going on. We don't have no leadership. I mean, this is what Eberflus and Ryan Pace and those guys that run the Chicago Bears, you have to take a look in that locker room and you have to remove the guy that everyone's bitter at. When you're walking in that locker room and they don't want to play for Matt Eberflus. He's a nice guy. He respects him. He treats them like men. Nobody's talking about his character, but he's just not the right fit as the head coach of this team. We saw DJ Moore and how upset he is and how inconsistent his attitude and personality is. It's a direct reflection of the head coach. And you got to remove him, name someone interim head coach, and move on.
And, think about this, Rodney. They're currently 4-8. They've lost 6 in a row.
Yep.
3 of those losses you can trace back to coaching flaws.
Yep.
The handling of the Hail Mary play. I don't care if a guy's screwing around. Well, I do care if a guy's screwing around, not ready. The coach needs to make sure these guys are ready. The coach needs to make sure that somebody's deeper than the last guy from the offense. So
especially a defensive-minded coach, Mike. Especially a defensive-minded coach.
Right. So that's one. Then they have a flaw in their field goal protection. Kick gets blocked. That's 2. They could have beaten the Packers with that one. And then this one, 3, another coaching flaw. They'd be, and I'm doing the math here, they'd be 7-5 right now and very much in the thick of things with those 3 games. And it comes down to that. That's why Belichick always harped on situational football. Those situations determine wins and losses. And when I watched Matt Eberflus's press conference after the game yesterday, and he defended what they did, which makes it even worse, I thought for a moment maybe he was just trying to protect Caleb Williams, because maybe Williams should have been more like a Peyton Manning or a Tom Brady would be in that setting and known what to do. But like you said, it's up to the coaching staff to make sure that rookie quarterback that you're going to put on the field knows what to do. And this isn't difficult because any kid that plays Madden knows what to do in that situation. You either call the play quickly so you have time after it to call timeout and kick the field goal, or you call timeout after the sack, which Matt Eberflus could have done from the sideline. I had a coach text me last night, hey, with 32 seconds, you call that timeout, You have time to run a play, get tackled in bounds, get your field goal unit out there, kick the field goal, and force overtime. You need at least 20 seconds to pull that off. You got 32 seconds when you start that play. If the clock's ticking when the play's over, you have time to kick the field goal and force overtime. So it should have been one or the other. Get a play off or call timeout. Not what they did. What they did was the worst possible thing that not even a junior high coach would do.
You talked about the 30 seconds, absolutely. And then when he's at the line of scrimmage, it ticks all the way down to 5 seconds. So that's 25 seconds to call a play. So you're telling me there's no situational awareness by your young quarterback. He seems like he's never, ever been through that situation before. And Mike, I don't know if you watched the game like I watched the game, but why does every pass seems like he's in a shotgun and he's taking a 5 to 7 drop in a shotgun? And it's like there's nothing quick where you can just get rid of the ball quick. No slants, no quick outs, no double ends to make it a lot easier for him. He's holding on to the ball too long. He's trying to do this USC thing in college, running around. This is the National Football League. And this kid is just messed up. And the fact that he's playing at times, you can say, wow, that was an incredible throw. That's all off a natural ability. They need to tear this thing apart. They need to bring in a guy like Ben Johnson who can really break this kid down and regrow him and really rebuild his confidence. That's what they need.
That really would be something too, if Ben Johnson would jump from the Lions to a division rival in Chicago. They'd face
But
each other twice a year. And I've been worrying about the Lions. Like, what are they going to do when Ben Johnson goes? Because he
hey,
really is making that team go.
5 years, 60 million. I bet he's gone. That's what you do. You commit 5 years, you give him 12 to 15 million bucks a year, and you say, hey, this is on the table. And forget about that. If you're Ben Johnson within the division, hey, those are your homeboys. You had a lot of success, but you have to do what's best for you, and that's to become a head coach. And that's that. If I'm the Chicago Bears, that's who I'm going after. And I'm making a very aggressive pitch. I'm letting them know right off the top, I'm gonna pay you whatever you need. I'm gonna make sure all the resources are there for you. We need this thing turned around because you're right, Mike. You look at some of the last month of the season, and you look at the Bears, and it's like, man, they could have won some of these games, but it's from coaching. And that's what's frustrating the players because they put so much effort, they put so much time into this, and they're looking at their coach. And every day that they walk in the locker room, they are freaking disgusted looking at him, saying, we could be 7-4, but you're holding us back. You're not making the right decisions. It's too much bitterness in the locker room. And if it's me and I'm the general manager, I'm moving on.
Yeah, a lot of players have been speaking out, and there were multiple comments yesterday where the players thought they did enough to win.
Yes.
When the players say we did enough to win, what they're saying is the coach is the one who lost the game. We did our
Yes.
job. The coach didn't do his job. On Caleb Williams, there is like we've seen flashes of brilliance, but one of the things I always look for in a quarterback, especially how he moves and operates in relation to the other 21 players on the field, specifically the 11 defensive players. Does he understand how much time he has to fit the ball in? Does he understand how much time he has when he's running, like a Patrick Mahomes? Patrick Mahomes is always a half step ahead of whoever's chasing him, and he knows when to go in and out and weave around the bodies. He sees the openings. It's like, he's operating at a higher level of awareness. The play yesterday when Caleb Williams was running along the sideline, and I think he was trying to do almost like the Lamar Jackson freeze stop that we saw Monday night and
Yep.
have Jack Campbell, the Lions linebacker, go right by him. And he does this stop, and Campbell hits him in the leg. It looked like his left knee got blown out, caved in, and after the game, Williams was upset. It's like, dude, you became the runner there. Just get out of bounds. If you're going to make these moves in the open field, you have to know how much space and time you have. You have to know if you're going to stop and try to juke a linebacker that it's going to work. Otherwise, don't do it. He almost got his own ACL blown out
Hey,
on
Mike, but I
Thursday
tell
with
you,
that move.
man, that's a tough kid because that hit that he took, I thought his season would be over. I thought he was headed to IR. I'm like, oh my goodness, what a hit. And then he gets up, he stays in the game, and he continues to play. So that showed me a lot of toughness. This kid wants to be out there. And a lot of times when you see him out there playing, Mike, it doesn't seem like he really embraces his teammates because he feels like he should be doing so much better. Um, but I like the kid. At times, I think he's a little too greedy. When you're watching him, he'll have a 5 yard guy wide open in front of his face, but it seems like he always wants the deep pass. And if they can break him out of that habit, and that's what made Tom Brady so great for such a long time. Tom made the easy plays. He made the fundamental plays, the 5 yard check down. If it's not open down the field, but Caleb, he bypasses the 5 yard check down and he wants that 15-yard dig down the field. And he has to break those habits. This is the National Football League. He's not going to be able to make those plays. It's the simple plays that Coach Dungy and I always talk about these young quarterbacks having to make.
And I would assume, Rodney, from the perspective of a defensive player, if the quarterback is making all sorts of different throws, short and intermediate and long, and you never know what's coming, I feel like that's one of the keys to successful offensive football. You want the defense on its heels, pre-snap, at the snap, during the play. We don't know what's coming next. When you become predictable that way and you're not incorporating short passing into your offense, then the defense knows we don't have to worry about that. You want the defense to worry about everything. And we talk about the defense having to defend every blade of grass. Well, it's not just the ones behind you. If you don't have to worry about the ones in front of you, it's a lot easier to defend the ones behind you. You have to worry about all of them. And I think that's what the Bears are missing, as you're saying. Caleb Williams wants to do too much. He's looking for that 14-point play that doesn't exist. There's no page in the playbook for a 14-point play, but it's
Well,
like he's
but
trying to do
Mike,
something big every time he has the ball.
yeah, think about this. At every level that he's played, he's been able to dominate. He's always been so much more physically gifted. He's always had better instincts than everybody, and he's always been a lot faster. So every level that he's played, he's had success. Now you get to the National Football League, you think that you holding the ball and running around and throwing, looking one way. No, that doesn't happen because these guys have mortgages, they have families, they have kids. They get paid millions of dollars to stop you. So he has to be able to adjust his game and not think that he can just come out here and do whatever the hell he wants to do. And I look at Keenan Allen too. Keenan Allen, he had a big penalty. His job is to stay composed. They brought you in because you're a veteran player, that veteran presence, to stay patient, to make sure that you're in control of everything. For him to lose control, throw a ball and get that penalty, that was a huge mistake by him.
I want to flip it over to the Lions briefly. They're now 11-1, best season they've had since 1934. Could be the best season they ever have had in franchise history. One of the small handful of teams to have never gotten to the Super Bowl. Is there anything from yesterday that concerns you? They're up 16-0. It should have been worse. And then they let the Bears get back into it, but they ultimately win the game. We're used to them being dominant, but a lapse like that against the wrong team at the wrong time is going to get them knocked out of the playoffs potentially.
No, absolutely. And that's something that you have to develop a killer mentality. And that's just what it is. And I think Detroit Lions, they're learning, they're growing, they're learning how to beat this team. They're learning to basically beat a team that has a target on its back. And for me, one thing that I was not really concerned about, but I actually liked was Aaron Glenn. To me, he's really shown that he's grown as a defensive coordinator. I mean, I see a lot more creativity, him dropping defensive tackles, him blitzing different guys, and he's really starting to have that confidence in his guys. They finally went out and got him the players that they need, Aleem McNeil, him and DJ Reader in the interior of that defense dropping. That's 700 pounds dropping into coverage. But this is the type of creativeness that Aaron Glenn has brought and the type of confidence that he's brought with this defense.
Yeah, the Lions might end up being without both coordinators come 2025 if Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn end up head coaching candidates elsewhere and get jobs and take jobs. All right. The night game on NBC and Peacock was the Dolphins at the Green Bay Packers. They played on Christmas Day a couple of years ago in Miami. This is different because we know the narrative with the Dolphins, and they talk about how we're going to break narratives, and they don't break the narratives. They go out into the cold, and they're a different team than when they're playing at home. We didn't see any of that sleight of hand, where's the ball, flip it over here, no look stuff. It's cold. It's even though it wasn't as cold as it was in Kansas City, it's still cold. And that team is different when you get them in the cold, period. That one could have been worse. They showed some life in the second half. But the Dolphins, they're just a team that's not ready to compete with the best teams in the NFL, especially when the temperature dips below 60.
Jordan Brooks, linebacker Jordan Brooks, came out and said the Dolphins were soft and the weather affected them. And like you talked about, Mike, we saw the same thing in Kansas City. And someone asked me, well, who do you think is going to win the game? Well, what's the temperature? If it's over 50 degrees, if it's over 50 degrees sunny, hey, I'm picking the Dolphins. But the Dolphins are a team, they're soft, man. And you get in their face, you play physical with them, you jam those receivers, they're going to have problems. So I knew that they would have issues going into Green Bay, trying to win that game. But for one of your guys, for a guy like Jordan Brooks to come in and say that you were soft, and just at the beginning of the game, I already saw it. I was there in Kansas City, so I saw it firsthand. And I'm at home now watching the game, and these guys are sitting on a bench. They got coats on, they're shaking, they got these big gloves on. You already know you have them. As a team, you see guys like that, you're walking, you're jogging on the field, you're laughing. We used to do the same thing to Tony Dungy, them. Marvin Harrison, them guys used to come out in the big coats and hats, and we used to sit back and say, "Yep, we got them." They're more concerned about the weather, and that's the same thing with the Dolphins. The Dolphins are a soft team. All that fake handoff, quick pass, nah, that stuff doesn't work in the wintertime.
Yeah, and we saw that last night. And Barry Jackson, the Miami Herald, had a stat today that surprised me but didn't surprise me. The Dolphins last year against teams that made the playoffs in 2023 were 1-6, and they were outscored by 110 points against teams that made the playoffs. This year, teams currently in playoff position, the Dolphins are 0-4 and outscored by 58 in those 4 games. They're just not ready to beat good teams. They know how to beat up on the teams they should beat. They don't know how to beat the teams they shouldn't beat. That magic runs out. That finesse doesn't work. And that's a problem for the Dolphins. And right now, 5-7. You look at the Broncos, they should win Monday night against the Browns and move to 8-5. The Chargers are in playoff position. Whoever doesn't win the AFC North between the Steelers and the Ravens will get the other one. We're pretty much at the spot where the Dolphins are done. They'd have to run the table and maybe hope for help at this point. They'd finish 10-7, and that might not be a guaranteed ticket in because the other teams are going to keep winning too. I think the Dolphins might be done, and you'll wonder what kind of changes they're going to make. They're tied to Tua Tagovailoa through 2026 at least, and they extended Mike McDaniel before the season started. Not that an owner couldn't buy out Mike McDaniel's contract, but this is a team that's just going to be kind of fringe contender, and they didn't address any of the issues last year that everybody knew about, and I wonder if they can even address them this year going into a new season and trying to change the narrative in South Florida.
Yeah, I agree too. The Dolphins are done, and I look at the Packers, and I just say people aren't talking about the Packers enough. I know Jordan Love, he struggled at times trying to do too much, throwing interceptions, but they had a lot of young weapons, a very talented group, and they've really upgraded their running back situation with Josh Jacobs and the impact that he's had. He told me at the beginning of the year, he said, "Look, they're using me in different ways that I've never been used." Because I asked them over in Brazil, "How do you like it here?" And they said they've embraced me. They're using me in different ways, and I'm going to have a big year. And he's excited. And that's what they're doing. They're using him in different ways. And if Jordan Love starts to struggle a little bit, they can go to Josh Jacobs because he's such an impactful guy. And I just love the fact that they upgraded. The defense is flying around. Xavier McKinney, those guys up front. The Packers are going to be a problem. I'm telling you, everybody's on the Lions bandwagon, and we know it takes one bad game from Jared Goff. And I'm telling you, watch out for the Packers, man. This is the team that I'm really excited about and been excited about since the offseason.
And the Lions host the Packers next Thursday night.
Wow.
Which will give Green Bay an opportunity to close that gap. Yeah, they're third place in the division. They're 9-3 and third place in the division, and they definitely have the potential to get to the Super Bowl. And one guy that doesn't get the credit he should, if we're going to talk about bad coaches, look at what Matt LaFleur has done in his time with Green Bay. He gets thrown into this dysfunctional situation with Aaron Rodgers not getting along with the front office. Matt LaFleur makes that work. And now they transition from Rodgers to Jordan Love, and Matt LaFleur makes this work. He's beaten Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, and Mike McDaniel this year. And LaFleur probably won't get many Coach of the Year votes because, Coach of the Year goes to the coach of the team that was the most surprising, not the best coach in the NFL. Otherwise, Bill Belichick would have won it 13 times from 2001 through 2020. It's just the coach of the team that we say, damn, we didn't expect them to be that good. Their coach must be coach of the year. And the Packers never are a team that we don't expect to be good. So LaFleur doesn't get the credit he should get. He's done a great job with that team very quietly, with a lot of humility. He just goes about his job every day. He's not out there seeking accolades. He's not very demonstrative on the sidelines. He's not a all about me type guy like you would say I am. And and he doesn't, because he's that way, it requires us in the media to notice it and say, hey, folks, this guy knows what he's doing.
Mike, you are spot on, absolutely. And I'm a big fan of LaFleur. And I always, any chance I get to compliment this young man and the job that he's done, the transition that from Aaron Rodgers, and we know what a big personality Aaron Rodgers is. And for him to have to humble himself and as a coach bite so many things that he was feeling to make that transition, and not only make that transition to a younger quarterback that hadn't really had a lot of experience, but also the weapons around him. He had to incorporate all these young weapons around him, Jaden Reed and all those guys, and he had to fix this offense. Then you add in a Josh Jacobs this year. Aaron Jones was last year. I think he's been absolutely fantastic. I say it all the time. I think he's one of the most innovative offensive minds. I think the Green Bay Packers don't get looked at. Their offensive line is very solid. They have a bunch of young weapons. They got a good run game. They're well coached. Like the Green Bay Packers, they're going to be good for a long time because they do things the right way all the time. And I'm a big fan of LaFleur and the things that he's been able to bring to the table.
The best example of him having the right instincts for how to get the most out of his team and not just be hard ass for the sake of being hard ass. When he got there, his offense is premised on 2 plays in the huddle, and the quarterback has the freedom to go to the other play. That's it. No audibles. You got 2 plays, and if you want to go to the other one, you go to the other one. And Aaron Rodgers didn't like that. I've been playing for 15 years. I understand the way things work. I should have greater freedom. And Rodgers did this passive-aggressive media campaign, and it became a big thing, and LaFleur backed off and gave him what he wanted. Because ultimately, I got to navigate this guy to get the most out of his abilities. So if I have to make some adjustments to be successful, I will. And I think that's good coaching. The flexibility to understand certain guys you need them to be all in, and you may have to give a little to get maximum performance. And he did that. And I just think that's a very tangible piece of evidence that shows he knows how to get the most out of all of his guys. And we see it every time they play.
Yeah, and the fact that he remains sane, because if it's me coaching and I'm not that guy, like I want to fight you. I might come up to your face and say, "Hey man, let's go take a walk and let's have a conversation. Like, do we need to get some things off our chest because this is the way it's going to work? You know, I'm the coach, you're the player. We're going to do things a certain way." And, you know, I'm really proud because I know that was a touchy situation for LaFleur with Aaron Rodgers, everything that he's accomplished and trying to balance that. So I think he's done, I tell coach all the time when I'm bragging about LaFleur, I think he's done a heck of a job with that transition from Rodgers to Jordan Love and just incorporating all those young players and just continue with the creativity on the offensive side of the ball. The Green Bay Packers are going to be just fine. I like them.
I mean, think about this too. He had to get Love ready to eventually play while Rodgers was still there. Think about how delicate that was.
Yep.
Because if Rodgers thinks you're spending too much time with Love, he's going to say something about it. He's going to make some
Yep.
comment about it. And it's just another minefield you have to tiptoe through. So LaFleur needs to get more respect and admiration. He has it here. We'll see if others do the same. All right, the last game that we'll talk about was the middle game. That was the go ahead and take your nap after you eat dinner game, because if the starting quarterbacks had been available, maybe it would have had a little more sizzle. It looks good on TV, but the Giants were 2-9 coming into the game. The Cowboys, yeah, they beat the Commanders, but they feel like they're done. Cooper Rush is playing instead of Dak Prescott. At the end of the day, the Cowboys get the win, 27-20. They didn't embarrass the Giants. And you got Micah Parsons saying we could go on a run now. Have you seen enough from the Cowboys in their last 2 games, both wins, to make you think they can go on a run?
Listen, see, that's what I'm talking about with Micah Parsons. Why just take it one game at a time that we can make a run? You beat the Giants, you beat a weak Washington Commanders team. Like, why are you even talking about that? Hey, we're going to look at the film. We're going to continue to study what we need to improve on. We're going to continue to work day by day. Forget about giving the media that. See, that's what I'm talking about. And that comes from the head coach. The head coach has to set the tone in the team meeting rooms. And he should tell the players, look, if they ask us, don't talk about no Super Bowl, don't talk about playoffs, talk about the way we're grinding one game at a time, one day at a time to become a better offense, to become better defense, to become better individual players. That's the message that needs to be talked about. And that's why I say Micah Parsons is not the leader that you want if you're the Dallas Cowboys. And that's why I always talk about I would trade him. I would get rid of him because not only do you have to pay him $40 million a year, but now you got to deal with the way he responds to media, him dealing with a podcast. Mike, do you understand the type of cussing out I would have gotten from my teammates if I would have been doing a podcast during the week? Because it takes time away from you because you have to prepare for other teams and what they got going on. And it takes time away from what you're doing, and your focus and your concentration should be on your team. And you mean to tell me that you actually got time within a season to watch all the tape that you have to watch and still prepare for a podcast? Come on, Mike. And and we see Micah Parsons. One last point. We see this defense is different with him in the game. He comes in, he provides a spark. But to me, it's still not enough. I would trade Micah Parsons. He wouldn't be part of my team moving forward.
One of his teammates, Malik Hooker, questioned his podcast habit, and Parsons got defensive. Hey, it's my day off. We don't work all the time. We have the capacity to do other things. And I understand that, but the problem is the podcast can create distractions, storylines, follow up. It's no different than Aaron Rodgers doing 40 minutes every Tuesday with Pat McAfee and AJ Hawk. It creates storylines that need to be cleaned up, can create distractions for the team. You just need to tread lightly with that. But Parsons, I think, is good enough to get away with it. I think if they want to trade him, they'll get a nice haul in return. They may have to from a cap standpoint. After you pay
That's
Dak
all I'm
Prescott and
saying.
pay CD Lamb, unless you want to have three highly paid guys and a bunch of mid-round draft picks, and that's your roster, you're not going to have a competitive football team. They could get back multiple first-round picks that they could use to reload the roster. It's just a heck of a risk giving up one of the best players in football. I mean, you agree that you set aside all the other stuff, between the lines, he is a difference maker for the Cowboys.
He's a difference maker, but I watch him in the run game too. You watch him go around blocks. You watch him trying to avoid a block, trying to come around and make tackles. No, sometimes you got to go up in there. You got to hit that pulling guard in his mouth, and you got to create a pile. I don't see the physicality. Yeah, I see a guy that can get after the quarterback, absolutely. But what does the Cowboys need? They need somebody that can stop the run, and he has to be held more accountable for his lack of play in the run game. That's all I'm saying. I'm not paying a guy $40 million a year because that's what he's going to want. He's going to want a 4 or 5 year deal for anywhere from 160 to 200 million. And for a guy that doesn't actively play the run game like that, there's no way I'm making that type of investment. And once again, I don't want three guys at the top. I don't want to be so rich up here that I'm poor down here. I want more of a balance. And that's why I always speak about Michael Parsons.
Speaking of the run game, the Cowboys finally got a great performance from Rico Dowdle, who is the guy. They were doing committee for a while. Dowdle, Ezekiel Elliott, Dalvin Cook was part of the mix. Now it's Dowdle, 22 carries, 112 yards, and a touchdown. That's good if they can do it against better teams. The Giants kind of defeated and deflated. Dexter Lawrence exited with an elbow injury. This isn't a great defense that they were going up against.
It,
They need
it
to
doesn't matter
continue to
though,
run the
Mike.
ball.
Mike, it doesn't matter if it's a great defense or not. The thing that matters is the last 2 weeks, Rico Dowdle, he's played some of his best football, and they're committing to running the football. And that's how you change the narrative. You got to play good defense, and you got to be able to run the football. And it almost forces you to run the football when you have a backup quarterback. You don't have the luxury of saying, okay, we're just going to rely on Dak passing the ball 40 times. We're going to actually run the football. And I got to give Mike McCarthy a lot of credit. I mean, he had these guys ready to play despite all the distractions and all the injuries and everything that's going on. It was good to see Deron Bland back. and overshown making a huge play.
That was a great
But
play.
I think he's done a good job, man. Mike McCarthy's done a good job in a tough situation.
Well, and think about that. The front office dragged their feet with CeeDee Lamb's contract and Dak Prescott's contract, which prevented the Cowboys from going all in with free agents aimed at making the team better than it was last year.
Yeah.
Mike McCarthy's lame duck, no contract, harder to command the locker room, get the respect, get the attention. At some point, it becomes a given the guy's not going to come back. Why are we listening to this guy? We're going to have a new coach next year. And that's why I thought it was interesting this week that Jerry Jones pushed back on the idea that McCarthy won't get an extension. Now, I think part of it is the showmanship of Jerry Jones to make his team interesting, but he could coach his way to another contract. He could coach his way to keeping that job. And the guys are responding. You have guys there that are playing hard in what otherwise felt like a lost season, and McCarthy gets the credit for getting them to do it.
Right. And that's what I'm looking at. I can tell you if a team respects their head coach by the way they go out and play. And those guys are still fighting for Mike McCarthy. It's not like they're going out on that football field saying, I don't like my head coach. I'm just going to show up. I'm just going to. No, they're out there fighting and clawing and competing and doing everything they can. So to me, it just shows that they have a lot of respect for Mike McCarthy. And the guy's done a really good job. Like what coach would want the head coaching job of the Dallas Cowboys? If you're Ben Johnson, you want to go there with Jerry Jones over your shoulder? You want to deal with that misery? No, you don't want to deal with that misery. Or maybe he does want to deal with that misery, but I wouldn't want to deal with that. Somebody looking over my shoulder, and for me not to feel like I have the freedom to make decisions without somebody looking over my shoulder. So that's something to look at.
And beyond that, you got an owner who does 2 radio interviews every week. And after most games, he's standing there with a bunch of microphones in his face, answering questions from the media. He's the face of the franchise. You have to be willing to surrender to this guy who's going to say God knows what and create storylines that you're going to have to deal with, fires you're going to have to put out. It just makes your job harder. And again, my take on Jerry Jones, and I finally realized that this year, this whole act of, oh, I really want to win the Super Bowl, and he wants his team to be interesting and relevant and on TV, and he wants to make a lot of money. And the rest of it, I think, is all aimed at that goal. He wants to be America's team. He wants to be the team everybody talks about and thinks about and wants to watch play, and winning is an afterthought for him.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because you got so many guys in that locker room that just it's just they take for granted being a Dallas Cowboy, and it's got to be more about than just popularity. It's got to be about winning football games, and when you don't have that priority from your ownership. And I knew that Kraft was all about winning when I was with the Patriots. I knew that he had given Bill the power, and we trusted Bill to make the right decisions. And when Bill would say, hey, negotiating deals and say, hey, we can't pay you this because, we might have to pay someone else, then you're willing to take a little bit less, because you trust the head coach and you trust the ownership and you trust the direction of the organization. If you don't trust the organization, which I don't think a lot of players actually trust Jerry Jones, and like you talked about, the trust should have came from the new contract with CeeDee Lamb, with Dak Prescott. If you're an organization that's tied together, that's organized, these are things are already pretty much mapped out. You already know that, hey, we're going to pay Dak anywhere from 55 to 60 million. We're going to pay CeeDee Lamb this. This is what we're going to offer. If these guys don't want this deal, we got to be ready to move on.
All right, one last topic before we wrap this up. And Tom Brady has been criticized by a lot of people for his work as a broadcaster. I haven't criticized him substantively. In my mind, I look at it this way. You've got Pat Summerall, John Madden, Al Michaels, and if you're not in that category, you're everybody else. I don't have grades. I don't have levels. I've got 3 that I regard as all-time legends and everybody else. And I don't try to say, this guy's here, this guy's here, this guy's here. So I haven't been listening to Tom Brady and criticizing Tom Brady, but he said something significant yesterday. He criticized Daniel Jones for asking to be released by the New York Giants. Now, my first thought was, dude, you know how football works. It's a business. They're putting this guy on ice because he's got $23 million in injury guarantees due next year. They wanted to get him off the field. They're not even letting him practice. He's running scout team safety and walkthroughs. They're keeping him in bubble wrap so he doesn't have an injury that requires them to pay him $23 million next year. They made a business decision. So if you don't want me here, if you're not going to let me practice, if you're not going to let me work out, if you're not going to let me do what I want to do, let me go. You're going to let me go anyway. That's why you did what you did. I was surprised and I was disappointed that Tom didn't understand that the Giants made a business decision, and now he's making a business decision.
Mike, you got to understand who said it. You're talking about a guy that was a six-round draft choice, a guy that's built completely different from any other individual that you've probably ever met. Tom is different, and Tom has that mindset that, hey, if I'm not the starter, I'm going to stay there. I'm not quitting. I'm not giving up. I'm going to fight and claw to the very end. I'm going to be in those meetings. I'm going to support the backup quarterback. I'm going to talk to the wide receivers. I'm going to be around. I'm going to be present. Now, even if I'm not there practicing and, actually getting in live reps, I don't see anything wrong with it. I just think that he was talking from his perspective because Tom Brady's a sixth rounder. You don't become arguably the greatest of all time being a sixth rounder if your mindset was completely different. And I think Tom saw that as him walking away, him almost in a sense quitting. And in situations like that, I'm not going to ask for my release. I'm just going to go and do what I have to do to be there to support the younger guys and support my teammates. And that's what Tom is coming from, Mike. So you got to understand, he's wired totally different because he's a sixth-round draft choice. So whenever somebody told him he couldn't do it, he worked even harder to make sure that he proved those guys wrong. That's perspective.
That's a great point. And you know what that means, Rodney? And I don't want to be critical of the production at Fox, but I have a feeling Tom Brady didn't just blurt that out for the first time in the booth on Thursday. He had to have said it to Kevin Burkhardt, to the producer, to somebody. They have to know that he thinks, I wouldn't have done this. And that's when the obligation arises to work with him on that and get him to draw it out the way you just put it. If he provides that flavor and that context, then I think it's easier to accept the point. But I look at it as, man, this guy doesn't understand how the NFL business works. And I also, now that he's part owner of the Raiders, it's like, yeah, you want the players to do what's right for the team, and the team does what's right for the team, which means make as much money as possible. And I hate to be that cynical, but that's how it goes. It's a for-profit business enterprise, and he's now an owner of one of the teams. So you want the players to do whatever you want them to do. You want them to take whatever you tell them they're going to take. And I think of this, Rodney, in the later years of his time with the Patriots, if Bill Belichick had done to him what the Giants did to Daniel Jones, I think he goes straight to RKK and says, hey, look, I want to play. I've been benched not because of my play. I've been benched because Bill's worried about $23 million that he might owe me next year. And they don't even let me practice. They don't even let me compete. I'm playing scout team safety. They want to let me lift. If you don't want me here, cut me. I mean, I suspect maybe he wouldn't have done it in 2002, but I think Tom Brady in 2019 would have done exactly what Daniel Jones did. Do you agree or disagree?
I disagree. I think Tom Brady would have hung in there. I think Tom Brady would have continued to practice hard, would have gave the defense a great look. I know Tom. I know his attitude. I know his perspective, and he always wants to be accountable. And that's the thing. He always practiced hard. He always wanted to make sure that he did the right things for his teammates first, before himself. It was about his teammates. So I think you're wrong on that, Mike. I think Tom would have never went up there. He probably would have complained about, or even went to Coach Belichick and said, hey, why are you doing this? But he would have never asked for like a release or anything like that. He's not built that way.
It is unfortunate, though, because this was not a football decision by the Giants. They took their best quarterback and they took him off the field to avoid owing him $23 million next year because they're going to cut him after the season anyway. Everybody knows that's what they did. They can call it a football decision. It's not. It's a business decision. And fans don't like that. Fans want the best players on the field. Players want the best players on the field. That's why the Giants have been kind of a mess the past couple of weeks, because first they skip over Drew Lock for Tommy DeVito. What the hell? So much for the depth chart. And now yesterday Lock plays, and at least they didn't get embarrassed like they did on Sunday.
Hey, Mike, let me just say this. Don't we want more of this from Tom? This is Tom in his purest form. I want more of this. I don't want a check the box Tom where he feels like he's just talking about the game. I want opinions. I want him to have opinions, and that's how you become a great analyst. It's opinions over analysis. And I feel like when Tom Brady sees something like this, and he's speaking from the heart, and he's saying, "Look, I'm a 6th-round draft choice. I fought and clawed, did everything within my power to get this opportunity. And because somebody says I'm not playing, you think I'm gonna walk away from my teammates and I'm gonna quit? I'm not gonna. He's not built like that.
Yeah.
So that's something is really a rallying cry for him. He's going to get motivated. He's going to work harder. He's going to put in more reps. That's how Tom Brady sees it, just to let you know.
And like I said, if he had explained himself the way you've explained it, I probably wouldn't have had a problem with it. I still would have had something to say because, as you know, I always got something to say.
Right.
We've said enough. Rodney, thank you so much for taking some time. Thanks everybody else out there for joining us for PFTPM. We'll be back Monday. Sasquatch is back. You'll see him 3 times a week starting next week. No more Monday only for Chris Sims. You'll see Rodney next Friday, and you'll see us around the clock at ProFootballTalk.com. Everybody have a great weekend. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.